Fred James, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you 3 interesting new manhwas that I found. Please leave a like and a sub if you like the content. It helps me to know that I'm doing something right here. Alright, let's go. These manhwas have gone under the radar for some time, but they're genuinely good and worth reading. One of which is a bit older, but it's still worth reading and it deserves a lot more shine. Our first one is Solo Leveling. In this manhwa, a gate opens connecting our current world to a fantasy world, similar to an RPG where monsters exist. When the gate opened, some people from our world found themselves with powers that allowed them to fight the monsters and successfully enter dungeons to complete them. Now this is pretty important because clearing the dungeons allows them to close it so that way monsters cannot leak over into our world from this new world. Keep in mind that normal humans do not stand a chance against these monsters. These people are called hunters, and they can be ranked from S to E, S being the highest rank, and then E being the lowest rank. So it'd go from S, A, B, C, D, E. When it comes to the ranking, the E rank, they're slightly above human. They would be considered superhuman. But S rank, these people would be considered deities because of what they can do. This story follows Sun Jin-woo, who is an E-rank hunter, weakest of them all. There's nothing really special about this kid. While doing a dungeon with his team, Sun Jin-woo is actually abandoned by his teammates and sacrificed for their escape. However, he is sacrificed in a ceremony to unlock the participants' potential. After the ceremony, he is now able to complete his own personal quests to level up and live life more like a role-playing game. He doesn't know this yet though. Now, in my opinion, this manhwa is very enjoyable thanks to Sun Jin-woo. He's an intelligent and patient character. He's not a dick thanks to his intellect. Usually characters that are portrayed as intelligent seem to be holier than thou or quite arrogant. But it's not annoying the way he carries himself. He really tries to look at things logically and moves forward towards the goals that he decides on early on. There isn't really anything in the story that's pushing him to get stronger besides him trying to save up enough money for his own goals and trying to get stronger as a person so that way he can fight whatever villains or monsters that may come up in the future. Because he's smart enough to realize that with this power, a lot of people are going to come after him. It's still early on, but he's been consistently working diligently on getting stronger and optimizing himself. Because in this story, his abilities are very similar to an RPG character, where he can allocate points, save items and resources, and find new skills to help him out. I really enjoyed that Sun Jin-woo kept his potential a secret from everyone that he could until he got strong enough that he couldn't avoid getting attention as an S rank. Now, this was really intelligent of him. Most protagonists wouldn't do this. They would immediately start sharing with everybody what their abilities are. He didn't tell anyone that he has this ability. To this day, I only think there are a handful of characters, if any, that knows what exactly he's capable of doing. When he goes off the train, he doesn't tell anyone. He simply tells people, hey, I'm going off for a week. I'll see you guys later. And then he comes back a different man because he's been through more trials and tribulations to develop as a character. Our next manhwa is called Dungeon Reset. A number of people get pulled into a fantasy-styled world where they have to work together to complete dungeons and trials in order to progress through the world and hopefully find a way home. It's very similar to an adventure RPG with some dungeon raiding mixed in. When one group has cleared the dungeon, it needs to reset in order to get other people into it. But Dawoon, our main protagonist, gets left behind in a dungeon and it resets with him in it, causing him to become a glitch in the dungeon, who is unable to proceed through the dungeon like other characters or other people. So he needs to find different methods and ways to proceed through the dungeon and find his own unique way home. This manhwa doesn't have a lot of fighting in it, but that's fine. It really works as a survival story set in an RPG. It seems quite a bit similar to like Minecraft. Having the main character being glitched is a very interesting take because it forces the author to move away from following the traditional storyline of the character having to interact with maybe a town or different characters to progress through the story. But this main character, he has to survive on his own. He has to figure out the rules of engagement with the game by himself. And this proves to be his advantage, because he has to get creative to find new ways to progress in the world. And he goes through different locations similar to a speedrunner in a game, because he has to find different ways to navigate the world besides the traditional method of completing bosses and then progressing through gates. He has to go around the gates because he can't enter them. As a character, I really enjoy the fact that he's not stupid. He's not the typical shonen protagonist that's really strong, has a unique ability, or anything like that. He's an average person, but the only thing that makes him different is his diligence and his focus. He is the kind of person that's determined to survive, regardless of whatever he has to deal with. And he's creative enough to find different and unique ways to achieve his goals. The big point of this character that I like is his focused mind. He is able to focus on a single task for days. And in doing so, he was able to find out that the more he does something is the faster he can level it up. And after a while, he can level it up and get different abilities. He's always able to figure out a way to use these seemingly useless abilities to his advantage. And he always has an escape plan in place just in case something goes wrong. This man is quite possibly related to Joseph's Joestar. And when I say this guy is hardworking, I mean he is ridiculous. Even one of the controllers in the game world that he's currently in has to give him props. So for me, that's an amazing character trait to have, as opposed to being a lucky protagonist who simply finds a way through the problems by brute forcing it or someone else solves it. You actually see how rough this guy had it, and the patience he had to exercise for his progression. Now, this also helps the flow of the story, because it seems like all of the things that he's gotten, he's earned it. Granted, a lot of these things he's actually stolen, but they didn't come easy. He actually had to figure out different ways and methods to get to his goal. And that's amazing. Really worth reading. I enjoyed this one. Our final new manhwa, and quite possibly my favorite, is How to Fight. Usually fighting mangas take the typical storyline of having a tournament or a main character that needs to defeat a special enemy, such as a relative like their dad, their brother, somebody very unique and special to the main character. But this manga follows a different storyline. Yo Hobin is a kid who's always getting bullied. He also works a part-time job to save money for his mother's hospital fees. After a while, he decides that he doesn't want to get bullied anymore and he sticks up for himself. This is where it breaks the mold. Traditionally, fighting mangas, the protagonist will only stand up for themselves after they've gone through their training arc and they've gotten some level of competence in their fighting skill. But Hobin didn't have that luxury. He's actually just by himself trying to figure this out as he goes along. When he stands up for himself, obviously, this ends up in a fight. But the fight was actually recorded and uploaded onto the internet. So what happens is he actually becomes an internet sensation. A sensation on YouTube. So this is a spin-off of YouTube, and I really find it quite funny. But thanks to this, Hobin decides to keep fighting bullies for his YouTube channel by sniping them. Now, he only goes after bullies that deserved to get attacked. So nobody gets attacked by Hobin unless they started first. Thanks to this, Hobin decides to keep fighting bullies for YouTube to save money for his mom. Now granted, he's not just going around picking fights with bullies. These individuals actually have to do something worthy of Hobin to decide to fight them. Now, early on, he would fight just to defend himself, but that's the right thing to do. If you're getting bullied, you should definitely stand up for yourself. And this is why I liked Hobin. He decided that he didn't want to get bullied, and even though he didn't have any fighting experience and he was going against people bigger and tougher than him, he decided to stand up for himself, regardless of what happens. And that is exactly what you should do. Because the tactic here is to try and make yourself less of an easy target. If every time a bully needs to bully you, they have to go through a hassle of actually having to fight you and confront you, they're less likely to bully you next time, because you're actually a difficult victim. Hobin is an inexperienced teenager and is a bit stupid, but it doesn't rub me the wrong way as opposed to other main protagonists, because it can be chalked up to his inexperience. It's kinda endearing, and he seems to be growing and learning while he's fighting his bullies and also helping to change them. Whenever he goes after one of these bullies, he always explains why he's going after them. He explains what exactly they did wrong, and he usually tries to shed light on it by sharing their wrongdoings with the world. Now, this is a bit selfish because he's using these bullies to make money, but because of all of the wrongdoings that they've done, it kind of cancels out in my eyes. His interactions with the bullies all varies based on their personalities. But it usually works well because after meeting Hobin, they change for the better. Or they double down into their negative traits. But that rarely happens, thankfully. It's actually quite refreshing to see characters who aren't necessarily evil, they're just going down the wrong path, but Hobin helps to put them back on the right path. In most cases, they end up being friends or they're just casual with each other. There's no need for them to fight each other because they know that Hobin's willing to defend himself and he already embarrassed them and put them in their place. If you've been in the real world, you've met a few people that need to have that done to them. I want to share an example of a fight with you guys from the story. Bit of spoilers here. But Hobin at some point interacts with Manji. Manji's an enormous guy, and he's also a champion Korean wrestler. But Hobin doesn't know this. What Hobin knows is Manji's been stalking one of his friends. Manji's very attracted to this female, but he has a habit of stalking women. And he's a bit of a creep, but he doesn't realize this. He's still a teenager, just like Hobin, but he's inexperienced with women. Hobin knows that hey, it's wrong for him to stalk his friend, so Hobin decides to actually fight him. In the fight, Hobin accidentally grabs his head and pulls off his hair. This wasn't actually his hair, this was Manji's wig. Whenever Hobin fights a bully, he's actually recording it and streaming it onto YouTube. And sadly, Manji's bald head was there for everyone to see. This immediately stops the fight because Hobin was horrified at his actions. This shows that this guy doesn't think that he's better than anyone. Once he does something wrong, he immediately apologizes. So he couldn't keep fighting Manji. And Manji was so embarrassed he couldn't compose himself to keep fighting either. At this point, Hobin is profusely apologizing to him. And they both have a sit down where they talk about being bald. And Hobin explains that, hey, being bald isn't that bad. There are quite a few people that suffer from baldness. And there are also quite a few options to help you with baldness. And also, the YouTube chat agrees with Hobin. After this fight, Manji actually develops a following, thanks to Hobin. So then Manji decides to follow Hobin's example and create a YouTube channel, where he's growing at an alarming rate. He's developed his own community of people who appreciate him, they find him interesting, and they really want to see him get better with his balding issue. And also, they want to see him get a girlfriend. That would be quite nice. This just goes to show the kind of result that Hobin can have on people. He actually changes them for the better by fighting them. He's fighting them to show that the little guy can fight and can win, and he's willing to fight. He's willing to try. This is why I really like this manhwa. Alrighty, I think I'm done for today. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.